You keep calling it overthinking, but if we're honest, it doesn't feel like thinking anymore. It feels like drowning. You know that moment. Your body is exhausted. It's late. The room is quiet. You're staring at the ceiling, hoping sleep finally wins. And then your brain starts. What if you said the wrong thing? What if they secretly dislike you? What if you fail? What if you're already behind? What if something is wrong with you? And somehow, one thought becomes 50. Your heart speeds up. Your chest tightens. You grab your phone because silence suddenly feels dangerous. One video. One scroll. One distraction. Anything to not be alone with your own mind. But the strange part is, you don't always look anxious. Most people wouldn't even know. You still show up. You still laugh. You still reply with, "I'm good." But inside, your nervous system feels like it forgot how to relax. Even during good moments, part of you is scanning for danger. That's what makes anxiety so exhausting. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. Quietly. Constantly. And this is where things start falling apart. Because after a while, anxiety stops feeling like a temporary emotion and starts feeling like your personality. You begin saying things like, "I'm an anxious person. I've always been like this. My brain never shuts off." Sounds harmless. It isn't. Because once you believe anxiety is who you are, you stop questioning the loop. You stop noticing the machinery. You think the problem is your thoughts. But here's what nobody realizes. The real trap isn't anxiety. It's what you do because of anxiety. That changes everything. See, anxiety creates discomfort. Your brain hates discomfort. So it looks for relief. Fast. Immediate, predictable. That relief can look innocent. Rechecking the message before sending it. Replaying the conversation again. Googling symptoms. Asking someone, "Are you sure it's fine?" Avoiding the task. Delaying the call. Opening apps without thinking. Tiny actions, tiny relief. But wait until you realize why that matters. Every time anxiety shows up, and you rush to make it disappear, you accidentally teach your brain something dangerous. You teach it. This feeling is a threat. This must be fixed now. We cannot tolerate this. Read that again. Not consciously, biologically. Your nervous system learns through repetition, and that's when the real problem begins. Because next time anxiety appears, your brain reacts faster, stronger, louder, not because danger increased, because sensitivity increased. That uncomfortable feeling, it becomes the trigger. Anxiety about anxiety, fear of fear. That's the loop. The anxiety. Loop. Feeling something uncomfortable, panicking about the feeling, escaping the feeling, training the brain to fear the feeling even more, over and over and over. You don't notice it immediately. At first it feels like you're protecting yourself. You call it being careful, prepared, self-aware, responsible. But sometimes being careful is fear wearing glasses. And fear is smart. It rarely says, "Hey, I'm ruining your peace." No, it sounds reasonable. Let's think a little more. Let's wait until we feel ready. Let's avoid embarrassment. Let's stay safe. Safe. That word has trapped more people than failure ever did, because safe feels rational. Safe feels mature. Safe feels responsible. But safe can slowly become a prison. And maybe this is uncomfortable to hear. But some of your daily habits aren't helping you regulate anxiety. They're feeding it. Even fake productivity can become anxiety management. You know what that looks like. Making elaborate plans instead of starting. Watching productivity videos instead of doing the work. Researching for hours, rebuilding routines every Monday. It feels productive, but nothing moves. Why? Because planning feels safer than action. Thinking feels safer than uncertainty. Control feels safer than reality. And anxiety loves control. Because control creates the illusion that pain can be prevented. But life doesn't work that way. You cannot think your way into certainty. You cannot plan enough to eliminate vulnerability. You cannot analyze enough to guarantee safety. And deep down to core, you already know that. Which creates another painful truth. The thing you want most, peace, might be blocked by the thing you trust most, your mind. And this is the part most people miss. Healing from anxiety doesn't start when anxiety disappears. It starts when anxiety shows up, and you stop treating it like an emergency. That sounds small. It isn't. Because your old pattern probably looks like this. Feel discomfort, interpret danger, react fast, escape, automatic, instant, no space. But recovery begins in the space, that tiny pause between feeling and reacting, that moment where your heart races. And instead of saying, "Oh no, not again," you say, "There it is. No drama. No war." Recognition. Awareness changes everything. Because once you can observe anxiety, you stop becoming anxiety. That distinction matters more than most people realize. You are not your racing thoughts. You are not your panic. You are not the tension in your chest. Those are experiences, temporary ones. But the strange part is, when anxiety gets loud, identity gets blurry. You stop saying, "I'm experiencing anxiety," and start saying, "I am anxious." One describes a state. The other becomes identity. That shift is subtle and dangerous, because people protect identities, even painful ones. If anxiety becomes part of who you believe you are, you unconsciously build your life around it. You avoid things because that's not you. You stop trying certain conversations, certain risks, certain dreams. Not because they're impossible, because your identity already decided the outcome. That's when anxiety becomes architecture. It starts designing your life. Quietly. One avoided call. One canceled plan. One delayed decision. One safe choice after another. And years later, you don't even recognize the prison because you helped build it. But here's the truth that changes everything. Anxiety is not always the enemy. Sometimes, it's information. Sometimes anxiety isn't saying, "Something is wrong." Sometimes it's saying, "You care." Think about that. Why do interviews make you anxious? Because the opportunity matters. Why does vulnerability scare you? Because connection matters. Why does failure hurt? Because meaning matters. Anxiety often attaches itself to importance, which means the feeling itself isn't proof you should stop. Sometimes it's proof you're near something meaningful. That realization can feel almost offensive, because you spent years trying to eliminate the feeling, when maybe the goal was never elimination. Maybe it was capacity, the ability to feel discomfort, without abandoning yourself. That's emotional strength. Not feeling nothing, feeling deeply, without collapsing. And if that sounds impossible, look at your own history. You survived every anxious night you thought would break you. Every panic spike ended. Every wave passed, even the ones that felt unbearable. That matters. Because anxiety's favorite lie is urgency. It says, "Fix this now. Escape now. Control everything now." But urgency is not always truth. Sometimes it's adrenaline wearing a microphone. And once you see that, something shifts. You stop obeying every thought. You stop worshiping every emotion. You stop assuming every feeling needs action. That's freedom. Not the absence of internal noise, the absence of automatic obedience. You can hear fear without surrendering to it. You can feel discomfort without reorganizing your life around it. You can think scary thoughts without believing all of them. And maybe that's what you needed to hear. Not that your mind is broken, not that you need fixing, but that you've been trapped in a loop, a learned loop, which means it can be unlearned, slowly, awkwardly, repeatedly. Not in one dramatic breakthrough, usually in tiny moments nobody sees. The moment you stop checking again. The moment you send the message anyway. The moment you sit with discomfort for 10 extra seconds. The moment you let uncertainty exist. Tiny moments, massive rewiring because your brain is always learning. The question is, what are you teaching it? Are you teaching it fear or safety inside uncertainty? Are you teaching it avoidance or resilience? That question lingers because every day, whether you notice it or not, you're practicing something. Practicing panic or practicing peace. Not perfect peace, real peace. The kind that doesn't require life to be controlled. The kind that says, I don't need certainty to move forward. That's rare. And powerful. So the next time anxiety shows up tonight, when you're lying in bed, checking your phone again, replaying conversations, staring into darkness while your mind runs in circles, notice something. The loop wants one thing, your obedience. It wants you to panic about panic. Fear, fight feelings, run. But maybe, for the first time, you don't run. Maybe you sit there, breathing, observing, letting the wave exist, and quietly remind yourself, this is discomfort, not danger. This is a feeling, not my identity. This will pass. And if this felt a little too real, maybe that's the part you shouldn't ignore.